Hello everyone, my name is Sudeshna and in this video we will look at the first poem of Standard 12th, the core course from the Flamingo book, and the poem is My Mother at 66, which is written by Kamla Das. So Kamla Das, the poet, was born in Kerala and she is one of India's foremost poets. She also wrote by her pen name of Madhavi Kutty. Her works are known for their originality, versatility, and indigenous flavor of the soil. Her subject matter is basically related to her personality, beautiful, sensitive, bold, and tormented. External factors do not reflect in her writings. Her writings bring out her true inner feelings. So, even in this poem, My Mother at 66, it's a very personal poem. It's a sort of a lyric. A lyric is a very personal poem, okay? So, in this poem, also, the poetess shares her inner thoughts, her inner feelings at her aging mother. So, before we go into the details of the poem, let us look at some issues here. The aging is a natural process. We all know that as time passes, we grow old. But have you ever thought what our elderly parents expect from us? The central ideas in this poem is it's actually about the mother-daughter relationship, the love and affection between a mother and a daughter. In this poem, the poetess talks about her aging mother. This poem is based on mother-daughter relationship. The poet shares her feelings for her aged mother who is on the verge of death. She is moving, advancing towards her death with the passage of time. The poet captures the complex subtleties of human relationships in this lyrical poem. So, how that makes the poet feel, we are going to look into this poem. We are going to look into her feelings through this poem. So, let us read the poem once. Driving from my parents' home to Cochin last Friday morning, I saw my mother beside me, doze, open mouthed, her face ashen like that of a corpse, and realized with pain that she was as old as she looked, but soon put that thought away and looked out at young trees sprinting, the merry children spilling out of their homes. But after the airport's security check, standing a few yards away, I looked again at her, wan, pale as a late winter's moon, and felt that old familiar ache, my childhood's fear. But all I said was, "See you soon, Amma." All I did was smile and smile and smile. So let us look at the explanation of this poem. Driving from my parents' home to Cochin last Friday morning, I saw my mother. So the poetess has visited her mother for some reason some time back, and it was time for her to return to her own home, which was in Cochin. So on one particular Friday morning, she was on her way to the airport in order to catch a flight to return home. She took a car in order to reach the airport, and in the car, her mother was accompanying her. Her mother came to see her off at the airport, and the mother, she was seated beside her in the car. Both of them were seated together in the car, and suddenly the poetess's eyes fell on her mother, and she noticed her mother very closely. So the poetess, she suddenly glanced at her mother and she noticed her very carefully, very, in a very detailed way. And what did she notice? And what did she see? Beside me, dozed, open mouthed, her face ashen like that of a corpse. So, her mother, she was sitting beside her in the car and she had fallen asleep. Okay, so her mother, who was sitting beside her, had dozed off to sleep, and in her sleep, she did not even realize when her mouth had opened. Her aging face appeared to be grey in color, like ash, and her whole appearance resembled that of a corpse or a dead body. So she had her eyes closed, her mouth had partly opened in sleep, and her face was very pale. It was sort of grey, and the entire appearance of a mother looked as if it was like a dead body, which is not a very appealing sight, and realized with pain that she was as old as she looked, but soon put that thought away. So, the poetess, when she looked at her mother, she realized that her mother was aging day by day. She felt pained by this fact. She felt sympathetic to her mother. So, she could not really accept the truth. And what was the truth? The truth was her mother, she was growing old and she was going to die soon. Okay. Her mother needed love and care, which the poetess was unable to give since she stayed away from her parents, and she needed to shift her mind away from this thought as it made her upset. So, as the poetess, she lives away from her mother. She is not able to take care of her mother on a daily basis. That is also one difficulty that the poetess faces. Again, the second difficulty is her mother. She is growing old and she cannot stop that process also. Okay, so it gave her great pain. It it really disturbed her a lot when she saw that horrible appearance of her mother like a dead body. So she needed to shift her mind away from that thought as it made her upset. She did not want to think about it. She did not want to think about the approaching death of her mother. She wanted to escape the reality. So, what did she do in order to escape the reality? She looked out at young trees sprinting, the merry children spilling out of their homes. So, since they were sitting in the car, after looking at her mother, she felt very upset, and in order to divert her attention, she looked out of the window of the car. And upon looking out, what did she see? She saw young trees sprinting. The young trees, they were lining the road. So as the car moved ahead, the trees, they were, you know, passing by. Okay, they were going back. You must have seen when we travel by train, we look outside the window of the train and the train goes at such a speed that all the trees and bushes and shrubs, they all pass by us so fast. It's almost like that feeling. She also saw merry children spilling out of their homes. So she saw a bunch of children. They were moving out, they were running out, racing out of their houses. They were very lively, they were very energetic. Okay, and they were very merry, they were very happy to come out of their homes. But after the airport's security check, standing a few yards away, I looked again at her. So the poetess has reached the airport. All along in the journey, the mother slept in the car, and she was very upset to notice the horrific image of her mother. That is why she looked outside to divert her attention, and in all this time, she reached the airport. Now it was time for her to be separated from her mother. It was time for her to return home, to enter the airport, and as she was about to check in to the airport for one last time before entering the airport, she looked back and she saw her mother. She was standing a few yards away. Now, yard is a measuring unit, okay? So, I think 1 yard stands for some 3 feet or something. So, she stood there and she looked at her mother one last time before saying goodbye. Okay, so she was about to leave, and it was a very painful moment for her. She did not know when she would come back and if her mother would be alive for her to come back, if she would be able to see her mother alive the next time. I looked again at her, wan, pale as a late winter's moon, and felt that old familiar ache. So when the poetess looked at her mother appeared weak and pale, just like the moon in the winter season, which has lost all its brightness and strength. Upon seeing her mother's feeble appearance, the poetess experienced a pain which was known to her. This pain was the pain and fear of losing her mother. Okay, so this moment was again another realization for the poet. She realized that her mother was no longer young when she was a little girl. Her mother had grown old and she had become as pale, as wan as a late winter's moon. So, just as a moon in the winter season does not shine that brightly, similarly, her mother, who used to shine once very brightly when she was young and beautiful, now the same mother, she has become old and feeble, weak, and she is compared to the winter's moon, which has lost all its brightness and strength. So, upon seeing her mother, the poetess, she experiences a pain which was known to her. It gave her sort of a pain when she looked at her mother before going away. And this pain was the pain and fear of losing her mother. So, even when the poetess was a child, she always feared she would lose her mother. And even when the poetess has grown up, she cannot discard this fear of losing her mother. My childhood fear. So the poetess felt the pain and fear of losing her aging mother. As a little girl, she could never tolerate being separated from her mother even for a brief period of time, a few moments. But when her aging mother dies one day, that loss would be permanent and she would be separated from her mother forever. Her mother's weak face reminded her of her dear mother's imminent death. She was about to lose her mother forever. So, this was the poet's childhood fear, the fear of losing her mother. Even when she was a little girl, she could not tolerate imagining the fact that one day her mother would die and she would no longer see her. Even after growing up, the poetess has the same feeling. She cannot reconcile with the fact that, no one is immortal. And as we know that man is mortal, everyone has to die someday. But she cannot accept the fact that her mother will also die. So she has this separation anxiety from her mother, from the fear of losing her mother. But all I said was, "See you soon, Amma." All I did was smile and smile and smile. But the poetess, she did not show her inner feelings on her face. She did not express her feelings at that moment. She did not show that she was afraid, that she was scared of losing her mother. Rather, she bade goodbye to her mother on a cheerful note, promising her to meet her soon. She wanted her mother to live so that they could meet again. The poetess departed from her mother on a positive note, on a hopeful note, which was reflected through her smile. So, the poetess, she said goodbye in a very, very cheerful and a positive tone, not letting her mother realize the fact that she was extremely scared of losing her. Okay, so that's all about the poem. So, once again, we need to remember that aging is a natural process and it is bound to affect each one of us. The complexity of life is that children leave their parents behind to fulfill their commitments and, in the process, find it hard to balance between looking after their aging parents and carrying out their other duties and responsibilities. This was exactly the case with the poetess. She could not give proper care and attention to her mother, which she was supposed to give. She had to balance, but somehow she did not do it properly. So that is why she always lived in the fear as she was staying away from her mother that one day she would just return to find that her mother was no more. So that is a very, very difficult problem. It's sort of a dilemma that children living away from their parents face. So certain words which we came across uh, are just listed below with the meanings, and you can check it out while reading the poem. You can note it down so that whenever you go through the poem, it will be easier for you to understand. Now, let us have a look at the various poetic devices, or as we call them, figures of speech, that the poet uses here. So, simile, that is face ashen like a corpse, wan as a late winter's moon. Metaphor, children spilling, personification are the trees sprinting, the young trees. Repetition, smile and smile and smile. And a very important imagery that the poet uses in this poem is that of life and death. Okay, merry children and young trees symbolize youth, energy, and vitality, suggesting life, which is in sharp contrast to the morbid image of the mother who is weak, frail, and old. The contrasting images of both life and death are shown in this poem. So, hopefully, you have understood this poem. I will see you in the next video. Thank you.